welcome to another episode of Liverpool Transfer Talk. My name is Ozzy, and I'm your host for this evening. Now, there hasn't been that many rumors surrounding Liverpool in recent days, but I've managed to gather up some speculation that we've seen in the last day or two, and there's been quite a few, and there's been a few surrounding some emerging stars, especially from this World Cup. So we'll talk about that in due course. But before we begin, please don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. So we'll start with the first rumor, and that is apparently a swap deal between Harvey Elliott and Adam Wharton. Now, this is not FIFA career mode, uh, but swap deals are not very common in this day and age. But the rumor is that Liverpool are exploring a deal for Wharton and are willing to sell Elliott to Palace as part of the swap deal. Um, the understanding is that Liverpool are looking into logistics to see how Harvey Elliott could move to Palace as part of any agreement for Adam Wharton, despite Iraola wanting to assess the player in pre-season, and that's something that can be finalized in the coming days. So my take on this rumor, firstly, with it being a swap deal, I don't think that's going to be the case. But that doesn't mean there is no chance of this rumor happening. What could happen is that we have a separate deal for Wharton and Harvey Elliott goes to Palace in a separate deal. It won't be a direct swap. It's not FIFA. We're not playing a video game right now. Swap deals are very uncommon. I know it's happened over the years. Well, when I say over the years, it happened probably like 10, 15 years ago. I think the last one I remember was Zlatan and Samuel Eto'o. So that's something that isn't very common. And in terms of the financial aspect of those type of deals, it makes more sense to do as separate deals rather than a combined deal, as I feel like the clubs get more finances or they can show more finances in their accounts to their respective leagues. So there's no point of doing that. Um, and also, secondly, if there is any chance of this being a deal, Liverpool have to pay money on top for Harvey Elliott to go to Palace. It's not a like for like transfer here. I would say Adam Wharton is a player of high value. And when it comes to centre midfielders in the Premier League, they are in huge demand, but also the price is inflated. We're seeing Mateus Fernandes go to Tottenham for £85 million. Tonali has gone for £100 million to Spurs as well. You've got other players being linked with £100 million moves. Elliot Anderson just went to Man City for about 120 mil. So when you're seeing those kind of prices being bashed around, you can't expect Palace to be modest and accept 40, 50, 60 million. They're going to want at least 70, 80 million pounds for Adam Wharton. Do I see that happening? At this stage, I think it's very, very unlikely. But we can't deny the fact that Adam Wharton is a player that has interested Liverpool over the months and years. Whether we pursue him this summer might have an impact in terms of who we have in midfield. Does Curtis Jones leave? Does McAllister leave? If one of those players were to depart, then we might have that conversation. But at this stage, I don't think there is a move for Alan Wharton to join Liverpool, nor do I believe Harvey Elliott will just be sold immediately right now. Pre-season has begun today. We've seen a lot of photos circulating for the first team as well as the under-21s. And we've seen Iraola in his training gear, so he's in full flow. So I think he will be assessing the squad in the coming days and weeks. And I think a decision will be made on Harvey Elliott probably by the end of this month. So we'll have to wait and see. But in regards to a swap deal, I don't think it's happening at all. Now, on to another rumor. I don't even have a source for it, but I saw it roaming around on Twitter. And apparently Liverpool are considering Ismaila Sarr as a summer signing for this coming window. My thoughts on that: Ismaila Sarr is a very interesting player. Whenever he plays against Liverpool, I've said it many times before, he turns into a prime Sadio Mane. Like, he's unstoppable at times. But when I watch him play for Palace against other teams, he's a shadow of himself in comparison to what we see when he's playing against Liverpool. And it's the same in the World Cup. For Senegal, he's missed some absolute sitters in this tournament. So for me, I don't think he's a Liverpool quality player. He has some sort of private agenda with Liverpool because he always seems to turn up and plays with ultimate aggression. But I don't know why that is. But in regards to the player, decent player, but I just don't think he is Liverpool level. So for me, not the option for us in terms of our right wing position. But I know some fans would be happy to see him in the Liverpool shirt. Not for me. On to the next player, and this is Pedro Neto. Apparently, Pedro Neto would be open to join Liverpool if the opportunity arises this summer. The Portugal international has a has been a long-term target, sorry, I should say, for the Reds. He's contracted with Chelsea until 2030. So my thoughts on that, Pedro Neto was a fantastic player at Wolves, has been decent for Chelsea, but for me, since he picked up that serious injury a few years back, I don't think he's been the same player. Yes, he's still able to, play to some extent in terms of being a player with great acceleration and getting past players and whipping in decent crosses. But I don't see him as dynamic as he was previously. I don't think he's as consistent as he was at Wolves either. So for me, you know, on paper or in terms of the name of the player, he's definitely a player we've been linked to over the years. Very talented, but I think the ship has sailed. I don't think he's that type of player that we should be pursuing this summer. And nor do I see Chelsea trying to sell him to one of their rivals. So no, I don't think this is um, a, a rumor that will be turned into reality. And I don't see Pedro Neto joining Liverpool anytime soon. Another player that we've been linked to in the past, and it's an interesting one because we've not been directly linked with him, but he is being linked to a move to the Premier League. So Newcastle are amongst the clubs that are in talks with the Stuttgart midfielder. He made 34 appearances last season as a holding midfielder. Um, he's contracted until 2028 and has a release clause of 31 million pounds. So my thoughts on that, why not we just hijack another deal from Newcastle and annoy them even further? 'Cause that's what we seem to do apparently. But jokes aside, I think Angel Stiller is a very interesting profile. We're definitely in the market for a holding midfielder, and he's definitely that type of player. But not only that, he is a player that has great distribution, so he can be a deep playmaker for the team if needed. So I would be surprised if Liverpool are not looking to hijack the deal. And I'm not just saying because Newcastle are interested, it's a release clause. So all we have to do is place a bid and we can have private negotiations with the player. I think he would be a good signing for us personally. 25 years of age, so pretty much hitting his prime years. Um, a player that hasn't been tested at the highest level, but he's always part of the German national team, and I'm sure he will be under Jurgen Klopp, who we all know is the new head coach for the German national team now. So let's see what happens with Angelo Stiller. There are very strong links with Newcastle, so that move might happen. But Liverpool do have an interest in the player. I would assume that we'd be placing a bid or we'll have some sort of talks with the player. Or maybe we have other targets in mind and Angelo Stiller is not someone that's high on the list. Who knows? We'll have to wait and see. But £41 million, I think that is a no-brainer. I think that's a great deal. If Newcastle do sign him, I think they're signing a very good player there. Just got a comment here from Double D. Big up Double D as always. He says, bring Neto. So Double D is still a fan of Neto. I like him, but I don't think he's that type of player. But of course, in terms of what he brings, he's a right winger, can also play as a left winger. So in terms of profile, would be perfect. Um, but at the same time, I think Chelsea might want to present an inflated price for this. Is not something I'm sure the club will want to engage in at this stage of the window. Another player that we've been linked with over the months and years and looks like he could be heading to the Premier League is Rafael Leao. Apparently, the player is open to joining Tottenham Hotspur after having initial talks over a summer move. Um, Spurs have held discussions with AC Milan and his representatives, and he's attracted to the prospect of playing in the Premier League. You've also got the likes of Arsenal, United, Barcelona also monitoring the situation, while Milan are willing to sell if the asking price is met. So my thoughts on that, clearly Tottenham on a roll right now because they're not messing about in the window. They've signed Mateus Fernandes, as I mentioned earlier on. They've also signed Tonali. They just placed a bid for Krupi, I believe, from Bournemouth. I don't know if it's been accepted, but they have, I think it's in the region of £80 million is what I read earlier on today. if they were to sign Creepy, my gosh, they're really trying to change their fortunes in a short period of time. In terms of Rafael, I do like the player. I've mentioned him previously in other shows. I rate him very highly. To be fair, I know a lot of fans don't rate him that much. There's definitely a split in the fan base in regards to their opinion on the player. I think a lot of fans still have old opinions about the player. When I say old opinions, their opinion were based on the younger Rafael when he was coming through the ranks, may not track back as he normally did, or may not be a team player in that regards. But I think time, you know, has changed. He's not quite that selfish player that people assume. I think he's evolved as a player. He's more of a striker now. Last year he was playing as a striker for AC Milan, so that's something that could be an important function for us because we are lacking firepower up top due to Ekitike's long-term injury. So if Rafael was to sign for Liverpool, for example, he would cover left wing and probably could be a starting left wing in our team and could also play up top as well. So I think he would be a decent option. I think the big deal would be in regards to his fee. How much would he cost? Is it 40, 50, 60 million pounds? If it's that kind of price range, I think it's worth the punt because we're seeing players being labeled with crazy price tags at the minute. But if you're half decent, you're slapped on with a 80, 90 million pound price tag. For me, it's not worth it. I'd rather go for a player of Rafael's experience and quality. I know he should hit the ground running due to his level of experience. So let's see what happens with Rafael. But at the minute, it doesn't look like he will be joining Liverpool. But we may see him in the Premier League as Tottenham are showing strong interest in signing the player. But having said all of that, that could also mean that their pursuit for Cody Gakpo comes to a finish because that's a player that they really wanted, but maybe the 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 outlook has changed, and maybe Liverpool want Gakpo to stay. Who knows? Of course, he's going through some personal issues right now. Maybe the club feel like it's a bit insensitive to speak about a transfer unless the player was to come and say, "Look, I want to move on from the club." I don't think Liverpool will be in a position to go up to him and tell him, I should say, sorry, that we want to move him on because it's not a discussion that they've had previously. I don't think so. So look, if Cody Gakpo stays, I don't mind it because I feel like in terms of what we need in the team, we've got an experienced player there who can play on the left wing, can play up top. So I feel like he would be an important squad member for us. But I do feel like we need a little bit more in terms of competing in all cylinders. Just got a comment here from Pert and Jav. Big up Burton J says, big up Aussie. I like Barcola and Sarr to Liverpool. Barcola, 100% agree with you. Sarr, I'm not too keen on. He only turns up when he plays against Liverpool. Other than that, he doesn't really turn up for me. So no, no for me in terms of Ismaila Sarr, but I'm fully on board in regards to Bradley Barcola. Another player that we've been linked with in recent weeks is Kunde. Now, Liverpool apparently keep an eye on developments regarding the situation of Julius Kunde at Barcelona, who are surprisingly open to sanctioning his exit this summer. He was deemed expendable in the Catalonia, has been made available in the market of 55 million pounds. Now, my thoughts on that: the player, fantastic player, very, very talented, very defensively sound, which is probably what we need on the right hand side. But I do feel like he's limited from the attacking part of the game, being a fullback. I would say over the years, he definitely had a bit of dynamism in terms of his play. But after watching him for France in the World Cup, he's not that type of player. He's still defensively sound, but he can't bomb forward as much, and he's not effective with the ball in the final third. So he lacks that quality in the crossing or a top back pass for me. So I don't think he's the right profile. If he was to sign as a centre back, I think that's another conversation because he could do really well in that role. But as a right back, not for me. And I think for 55 million pound, that's a huge amount of money. I feel like that money could be spent elsewhere, and we don't spend too much on a right back, if that makes sense. I'd rather that money be spent on a midfielder or a winger. So for me, I do like the player, but I don't think he's that same level player that we probably saw over the years. And there's probably a reason why Barcelona are thinking of sanctioning a move for Kunde to leave the team. So let's see what happens. But for me, I think there's other targets that we can look at for the right back position. Now, another player that has been the sort of the hottest prospect in world football right now, and he goes by the name of Gilberto Mora. Apparently, Liverpool have made contact with his representatives and are preparing an offer. And the 17-year-old Mexican wonder kid reportedly has a 20 million euro release clause. Now, my thoughts on that in terms of the release clause, that is absolute peanuts. So I'd be all over that, to be honest with you. But it's not going to be an easy pathway to sign the player. We are not the only team that have registered an interest. You've got the likes of Real Madrid, Barcelona, Manchester United, Arsenal, just to name a few that have shown interest in the player. But having said all of that, Liverpool have shown the strongest interest and are willing to pay that release clause. I mentioned the release clause. There's definitely conflicting reports. Originally, I was hearing that Liverpool are willing to spend 40 million euros on him. Then I heard there's a release clause when Arsenal were linked with him. Now we're hearing there isn't a release clause, but his club want to add one into his contract. So I'm not sure what it is, but I feel like if Liverpool had been in dialogue, they would definitely have said, look, whether there's a release clause or not, we're willing to spend 20 million pounds or 20 million euros straight away. And that should be enough to acquire the services of the 17-year-old. If you haven't seen him play, he's number 10. So he would come in and be the understudy to Florian Wirtz in our team, but he's very good on the ball. Slight concerns for me in terms of his physique. I'm not sure if he's quite ready for the intensity of the Premier League, but having said all of that, I think if he was to join, that's something that we could work with, in terms of his development. And once he's ready, he could be a very important player for the club in terms of the short term and for the long term future as well. So definitely a player that would excite the fans because he's shown a good account of himself in the World Cup, and it would be a name that I'm sure a lot of fans would be excited to see in a Liverpool shirt. So let's see what happens regarding Gilberto Mora. Another player that we've been linked with in the past, but it seems to have resurfaced again, and that is in the name of Kefren Turam. Now, apparently, Liverpool are interested in signing Kefren Turam this summer. Juventus are working hard to sell the midfielder and want 50 million euros, but that is considered too high. So my take on that, a bit surprised that they're working hard to sell him. I think they're trying to make space and raise the funds. I think they want to sign. Is it Frank Kessie, the Ivory Coast midfielder? So they're trying to sign him at Juventus, but in order for that to be materialized, they need to sell players and they need to probably um, free up some finances in order to make that deal happen. And they've looked at Kefren Turam as the player that they want to sell in order to accommodate that move. He's actually not done too bad for Juventus. He's had a good season for them last season. So I'm a bit surprised in regards to the link. But is he the player that we want at the club? As a player individually, I think he is very talented. But I'm looking at the club thinking that's not the profile we need. We need a specialist number six. We need a proper number six in our team. Kefren Turam can play as a number six, but he's more of a box to box midfielder. He's the same sort of profile as Gravenberg. Gravenberg is a player that came in. For me, Gravenberg was a number six before he came into Liverpool. And I actually played in the double pivot. He also played in the double pivot for the Netherlands under 21. So his role was as a six, but can also play as an eight. Kefren Turam is the other way around. He's an eight naturally, but can play as a number six. So I don't really want two similar profile of players in our team. I would like us to sign a specialist number six who can complement the likes of Szoboszlai, Gravenberch, McAllister, Jones. I think that would be the combination that we need in our team. For me, Kefren Turam is not quite the player there that we need, but let's see what happens. Apparently he's available for transfer, so I'm sure he'll get his move in due course. Another player we've been linked with is Manu Kone. So it looks like we're sort of in the past right now. This was 2 summers ago where we were linked with both players, and looks like those rumors have resurfaced again in 2026. The 25-year-old is uh, a Roma player. He's been at Roma for about a year or two now. Um, we all know, he's a midfielder, can play as a DM, can play as a number eight, and apparently he's available for £45 million. So my take on Manu Kone, I think he's a better fit in comparison to Kefren Turam. Kone would come in as a number six, and he can play that role. We've seen it for Roma, but more recently we've seen it in the World Cup for France, where he's very much the DM in that team. He's a player that has great defensive awareness, very mobile, good distribution, great interception in terms of making tackles. So he's become an all-round midfielder in the last couple of years, more defensive-minded now. So I feel like he could definitely play that double pivot role for Liverpool. He's not quite the number six specialist that I want, but he could definitely be a player that adds quality to our midfield. And if we can't find that sort of profile, I think Manu Kone would be a very interesting profile for us to look into. So if he is available and for £45 million, I think the club should be all over that, because that sounds like a great deal, and we'll be signing a player that's in his prime at 25 years of age. And I feel like he'll definitely flourish within our ranks. So hopefully the rumors are true and we can get Manu Kone over to Liverpool. Speaking of getting players over to Liverpool, we've been linked with a young prospect from PSG. He goes by the name of Ibrahim Mbaye. Apparently, the rumor is that Mbaye wants to leave Paris Saint-Germain this summer. Aston Villa are very interested in PSG winger, as well as Tottenham, who are monitoring the situation. Mbaye could become a sale option for PSG as Bradley Barcola continues to attract major attention. Now, this is very interesting because we're interested in both Mbaye and Bradley Barcola. Of course, the Bradley Barcola is something that is more well known, whereas Mbaye, we've been linked to him in the past. He's a name that I've been quite familiar with. I watched him quite a few times for PSG, and I've been intrigued to see how he's done for Senegal. And he's definitely made a name for himself. He's definitely produced some good performances. Has been a live wire whenever called upon. I think he would be a fantastic signing for us. I know he's very young, 18 years of age, but he has a very high potential and a very high ceiling. He would come in and pretty much cover both wings. He can play on the right, he can play on the left very easily. I would say he's probably a right wing. I think that is his primary position, but can easily play on the left-hand side as well. So he could be a very useful sign for us, especially if we aren't able to attain Barcola. Maybe we go for Mbaye instead. Of course, we'd want Barcola because he's a bit more experienced and has been more prolific in the last couple of years. But Mbaye has a great potential. So for me, if there's any truth to this, I would personally be very excited because I'm a fan of his. I've watched him a few times, and he looks like a top player and a top prospect for the future. So yeah, let's see what happens in regards to Mbaye. Definitely one to watch if you're not familiar with his name. Another rumor that's been circulating in regards to Somerville. Last week, I mentioned this report that we're no longer interested in the player, and all of a sudden, Liverpool are showing serious interest in signing the West Ham winger. Apparently, Liverpool have made a concrete move for the Dutchman, who is valued at £50 million after an impressive World Cup. You also got the likes of Chelsea, United, Fulham also in the race for Somerville. My thoughts on that: this is clearly paper talk. This is clearly his agent doing the rounds and using his finances to generate some level of interest for his client, because we're hearing different reports every week. And it's a bit bizarre because we've seen links to PSG, Real Madrid, Barcelona, and now all of a sudden Liverpool been thrown in the mix. And now you've got Chelsea, United, and now Fulham out of all the random teams that they could have mentioned. The Fulham one might be genuine. I don't know about the other teams, to be fair. In terms of Somerville as a player, very talented, can be a live wire on that left wing. But for me, he doesn't surpass anyone in our squad. For me, I would prefer to give Rio and Gomo the chance to stake a claim. I don't think he's better than Cody Gakpo. Of course, he's a bit more agile, quicker, but the gameplay is quite similar. They're both very predictable. Somerville likes to cut in and shoot just like Gakpo. Um, I would rather keep Gakpo in that scenario, which will surprise quite a few of you, only because he's versatile. He can play up top and can play on the left wing. So for me, Somerville is not really an option. And to cost around £50 million. For me, that is not the money that should be spent on a player that isn't going to be a starter for me. So no, it's a no go in regards to Somerville to Liverpool. Now on to the next rumor, and that is regarding Kevin. Now Liverpool are monitoring the Fulham winger Kevin as they continue their search for attacking reinforcements. Uh, the Brazilian joined the Cottagers from Shakhtar Donetsk last season for a club record fee of £40 million. He's contracted with Fulham until 2030. My thoughts on Kevin: I've only seen glimpses of him last season. Looks live wire, really, really good. Has a bit of a vibe in terms of playing like Willian. That's the kind of thoughts I had whenever I saw him play last season. So good player, very talented, hardworking. Could be a decent addition to our squad. At 40 million, they spent 40 million euros just last season, so they're not going to give him to us for any less of a fee. It'll be definitely upwards of 40, 50, no, it'll be 50, 60 million pounds at least. So for me, I've not seen enough of him, but decent player. He's only 23, so he's a very young profile, but he's definitely a player that can grow and that can really improve with time. Would it be at Liverpool? I'm not too sure. We have been linked with wingers outside of the league that are probably even younger than him and could still be regarded as a risk. So if you look at Kevin, he's got 1 year experience under his belt in the Premier League, so maybe he's not as much of a risk in comparison to others. So let's see what happens. I do think he's a very talented player. I think it'll depend on the finances. If we're paying about £60 million, I might want to go elsewhere and look for a different profile. But he's definitely a player that is definitely on the shortlist, in my opinion. Double D says Williams, solid comparison. That yeah. So whenever I see him play, that's the kind of vibe I get. He reminds me of a William type of player, very technical but very efficient on the ball, but quick in terms of his dribbling. Can get past players with very very much uh, with ease. So definitely a player to look out for. But if he's ready for that step up to Liverpool, I'm not quite so sure at this stage. But definitely one to watch, I would say, next season. Another player that we've been linked with is Sergio Arribas. Liverpool are apparently interested in the Spanish right winger who plays for Almeria. So he's a left-footed forward that scored 26 goals last season with 7 assists to his name. I watched the compilation. I'm not going to say I watched Almeria. I'm an absolute liar if I said I was. Um, Looks decent, technically really good. He's actually a former Real Madrid Castilla player, so the Real Madrid B team. So he's come through the ranks there, decent from a technical standpoint, a good finisher. I would have some reservations in terms of his build and if he could handle the intensity and physicality of the Premier League. There would be question marks regards to that. Um, so I'm not too sure if he would be the right fit for us. And I also feel like maybe this is not the right comparison, but when we've gone to sign players from La Liga, I think of Iago Aspas, who we signed all those years back, and he was very good, in a Celta Vigo shirt. And when we signed him, it wasn't quite the same type of player. I think the league was too quick for him and too physical. It could be the same here for Arribas. So for me, it looks great on a YouTube compilation, but I'm not sure if that talent will be suited for the Premier League. But that's just my take on the player. And we've got some solid breaking news today from Fabrizio Romano, and it's regarding a up and coming player that we've signed. So Liverpool have completed the signing of Scotland under 16 captain, and he goes by the name of Dara Jikimi, who plays for Celtic, or played for Celtic, as in he's the Liverpool player now. And the highly rated defender is set to join Liverpool for on a 5-year contract, um, as Liverpool continue to invest in elite young talent. Now, my thoughts on that. Firstly, Liverpool are not messing around when it comes to signing elite young centre backs, because we've signed quite a few in the last few months. We've signed Mortal Ndai, the Senegalese defender. He's 18 years of age now, left-footed, and has made a name for himself in the last few months for the under 21s. You've also got Ndukwe, who I'm going to mention very shortly. He has just joined Liverpool. It was his first training session today for the under 21s. He's another player. Uh, so we've got Leone and Jacquet in the first team. So of course they're a bit more senior in comparison, but they are definitely players um, that have come in and could definitely make a name for themselves. So these are players for the future. I watched a clip of this 15-year-old. He was taller than the referee. So, he's very much advanced in terms of his height and build. Played on the right side of a centre back. So that's an interesting position there because the other players in terms of Mortala and Dai and Ndukwe, they're more left-sided. So, if they were to play for the under 21s together, those three could definitely combine with each other very, very well. So one to watch. He's definitely highly regarded, and you already know about our sort of good luck, or should I say, a good omen over the years, where Liverpool always win the league when we have a Scottish player in the squad. So hopefully, he develops into the player that we want, and is one of our centre back options. And then hopefully that good omen of having a Scottish player within the ranks helps us achieve those dreams in terms of winning the league title and Champions League title and so on. So yeah, looks like we're going to have a Scotsman in the team eventually. But of course, let's not put too much expectation on the player. He's just walked in, 15 years of age. So let him develop, let him learn the trick of the trade, and let him play and progress within his sort of time frame. And once he's ready for the first team, I'm sure we'll see him in due course. So yeah, wish him all the best, and hopefully we'll see him in Liverpool colours very, very soon. And speaking of Ndukwe, this is a photo of him in the under 21s training gear there. So for me, I'm very excited to see this player play this pre-season, because I do think he'll be part of the under 21s, but he might even get a look in for the first team. Uh, but even if it's for the under 21s, I'm excited to see how he does, because I do feel like he's a player that can break into the first team next season. Um, or should I say upcoming season, because the season will be starting in August. So definitely a name to remember, because I do think he will break into the first team in due course. And is a player that has great potential. He's 6'6", 6'7", only 17 years of age. Um, he's an absolute giant of a player, but technically really good as well. Great diagonal passes from what I've seen. He has a bit of Van Dijk, but I'm not saying he is going to be the next Van Dijk. So please don't quote me on that. But in terms of stylistically, he likes to play that type of role where he's a right-footed centre back, but likes to play as a left-sided centre back, and he can play that diagonal pass very well. So there's definitely similarities there. And of course, I'm sure he models his game to Van Dijk, as sure a lot of young players do coming through the ranks. So one for the future, that could be one for the present as well, as he could potentially break into the Liverpool first team in due course. So yeah, exciting time for us Liverpool fans to see these young players coming through, and hopefully they'll be given an opportunity under this new coach in Andoni Iraola, who I'm sure will give a lot of these youngers an opportunity to stake a claim in the first team. But that is it for today, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. Shout out to Double D and Burton Jack for your comments. Appreciate your engagement as always, guys. If you haven't already, please don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to this channel. In terms of upcoming shows, I'm sure we'll be doing some more transfer shows later this week. The rumor mill has gone a bit quiet, which is understandable due to the progression of the World Cup tournament. Of course, teams are being knocked out now, so of course players are going on holiday, and I'm sure in the next couple of weeks we'll get a bit more sort of momentum, I would say, in the transfer market, where more players will be linked, more players will be ready to make their moves, and we'll see, more outgoings and incomings as well. So let's see what happens. But that is it for today, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. Take care, stay safe, and I hope to speak with you all very, very soon. Goodbye.